Peace and love, family. Welcome to U.S. Political Prisoners and You, brought to you by Black Power Media. And this is Northeast Political Prisoner Coalition and EPPC. I'm Brother Frank, and I'm with my sister Betty. I'll introduce her in 1 second. I just want to go into this introduction as well as a quick bio on Winnie Mandela. Today is day 13 of African Liberation Month. May is a very important month, just as all other months are important because we're in a consistent struggle for our right to be self-determined. But when we go through different months, we are attacked by different distractions, and we have to remind ourselves what course we need to be taking, especially when it comes to our right to self-determination. Which are political prisoners, people like Mumia Abu Jamal, people like Ronald Reed, people like Joseph Bowen, and so many others, the Virgin Island Three, have showed us that we must be steadfast when it comes to our right to self determination. We must be committed. We must be focused. We must, as Malcolm X taught us, have political maturity. And speaking of Malcolm X, this month is his birthday. Let us not forget his contributions. Let us keep his legacy alive in theory and in practice, because we need both if we're serious about moving forward, if we're serious about our liberation. So I just want to go into a timeline of Winnie Mandela before my sister comes on. And Winnie Mandela, an iconic anti-apartheid activist, had a life marked by significant events that shaped South Africa's history. Here's a timeline of key moments in her life. 1936, Winnie Mandela Mandela is born in Mimbang, Weni, Transiki in the Eastern Cape, South Africa. 1953, she moved to Johannesburg to study at the John Hofmeyr School of Social Work. 1958, when he marries Nelson Mandela in Bizana, Eastern Cape. 1959, she gives birth to her first child, Zanani. 1960, when he gives birth to her second daughter, Ziswa. 1962, the apartheid government bans Winnie, restricting her movement to Johannesburg and prohibiting her from being quoted in the media. 1965, a severe banning order is imposed, further limiting her movements to her neighborhood of Orlando West. 1969, Winnie is arrested and kept in solitary confinement for 17 months after her home is raided by the police. 1973, she is arrested again for meeting with a bad person and is sentenced to 12 months in prison. 1980s, Winnie becomes a prominent figure in the anti-apartheid movement, often referred to as the mother of the nation. 1990, Nelson Mandela is released from prison after 27 years, and Winnie initially shares in his political activities. 1991, Winnie is convicted of kidnapping and sentenced to 6 years in prison, later reduced to a fine. 1994, she is elected as a member of parliament and serves until 2003 and again from 2009 until her death. 2018, Winnie Mandela passes away on April 2nd in Johannesburg, leaving behind a legacy as a fierce advocate for justice and equality. All right, so those are significant events. Let us not forget our beloved comrade, a former political prisoner, and a lifelong freedom fighter. So, my brother, my sister, I'm sorry, my sister Betty, welcome again. Welcome to your second home or your third home, because I know you in many platforms. Thank you for coming on board, my sister, again.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for celebrating this wonderful warrior in our history and in the history of all our movements and struggles for liberation.
Yes, yes. So my first question to you is, how has Winnie Mandela impacted your life?
Well, the interesting thing about it is we all knew of Nelson Mandela, but I have to admit, I did not realize who and what role Winnie Mandela played until later, after Nelson Mandela was freed. I knew she was one of the main um, elements in the struggle to free Nelson Mandela, but I did not. but I always thought of her in terms of the struggle within the context of Nelson Mandela's struggle to free his homeland, South Africa. When I began to notice Winnie Mandela was when the society that she had helped and struggled to be free began to focus on her negatively. And one of the reasons they focused on her was that for her, like Che Guevara, the struggle continues. The achievement of government freedom from the colonial power is not sufficient. And many people felt that she understood this, that she stood against corruption of the neo colonial direction that so many of the ex colonial entities, that direction is where they went. They went from colonialism to neo colonialism. And in some cases, Winnie Mandela was attacked and she was alienated because for her, the revolution should continue. And that is the impact that she had on me.
Wow, that's very powerful. I appreciate you sharing. I know when I hear about Winnie Mandela, you know, when I first learned about Nelson Mandela, at this point, her name was associated with him, so I automatically heard about her. But as just like you said, I didn't know the extent of her work, her contribution. But I know that I used to always hear like besides every strong black man is a black woman. So I always thought her as a symbol of strength and support and a solid foundation. So I had a lot of respect for her. As I became more politically conscious, I started understanding the seriousness of her work and how she was attacked, and you know, it just let me know, how things work out politically, right? It's always contradictions happening. It's always a struggle. So it's a struggle within a struggle within a struggle. But as I started to learn more about her, I had built a stronger admiration for her because she had to endure. Right, you're getting criticism, and people are attacking your name and your character, but yet she still stood firm. She still kept pushing forward, and I built that strong admiration for her, and it made me understand clear what it takes to advocate for your people's right to self determination. So
Mhm.
she represented what our political prisoners represent: commitment and sacrifices. People like Mumia, people like Ronald Reed, and so many others. Imam Jamil Alamin, now he's an ancestor, but you also think about Kamal Siddiqui, and when he was home and he was a part of the Black Panther Party, he was selling his newspapers, he was doing the work. There's that consistency of while you're in prison, you still have to have a relationship with your people. And while she was a political prisoner, she still had a relationship with her people because she knew what the struggle was all about. My
Well, one
second
of the
question
things
is, how can her example of being a wife of a political prisoner keep families of political prisoners strong today?
one of the reasons I want to highlight who she was, and I appreciate you so much for having this discussion. I'd like to call up the name of our brother, beloved Sekou Odinga, and his second partner, Dekwe, because as everyone knows, she was an educator. And she taught her English classes about political prisoners and Sekou Odinga. And I remember so many of the events we used to have for political prisoners, seeing her students serving at these different functions and how political they were. And the reason I'm calling up this image in context with Winnie Mandela is because she continued after her mate was freed to be controversial because of her attacks on the government and her strident appeals to radical young black followers to continue the real revolution of anti colonialism and true freedom from Western oppression. And this is, to me, what the role of any revolutionary partner is in a relationship, in a struggle for freedom. One of the most poignant moments in the movie The Battle of Algiers is when the revolutionaries are talking to each other and they say, yes, once we gain our freedom, then the real struggle begins. The nation building, the keeping the correct political path. First, you free them from the overt conqueror. Then you free them from the lifestyle and the legacy of colonialism that is left behind. And that always involves a class struggle against corruption. And this is what Winnie Mandela, to me, represents. And if you look at some of the struggles that we are having within our movement, you can see that this whole struggle against dual and contending powers in colonial capitalism within our communities is what is also destroying us as a people. We have these corrupt social systems
Oh, we have a technical difficulty happening at this moment. So until the sister comes back on, I just want to go into a quote from Winnie Mandela. It says, "If you are to free yourselves, you must break the chains of oppression yourselves. Only then can we express our dignity. Only when we have liberated ourselves can we cooperate with other groups." So just understanding what she knew uh, very clearly when it came to our right to self determination, we had to free ourselves. How do we got to free ourselves? You know, that has to be about understanding what's going on politically. That has to be understanding the importance and the power of knowing who we are, having a culture revolution, changing our perspective to our reality. And once we do that, we're able to fight stronger, fight harder, and build allies differently. And because everything has to be about what's in our own interests, short term and long term, because people can come aboard and support us, but they're not us, right? They don't have to endure this struggle as long as we have to, if they choose not to. But everything is subjective. Everything is about evaluating it and see the authenticity of it. So when we're talking about Winnie Mandela and we're talking about the things that she had to endure, you build a stronger admiration for her. You start to understand how serious she is, right, about her people's right to self determination. You see the attack on her happening, and yet she still knew that she had to keep going. She had to keep fighting because of what was at stake. So me learning about her, looking at her timeline, looking at her upbringing, her relationship with her mother, her relationship with her siblings, her relationship with her father, her relationship with Nelson Mandela. She was focused. She was determined. She took accountability for errors that she made, but she knew that people were coming at her and attacking her because of the seriousness that she was about. She knew the relationship to her people and the oppressor in terms of what the oppressor wanted and why the apartheid system was the way it was, and land being the basis of independence, as Malcolm taught us. So she knew that you had to keep fighting until you got exactly what was beneficial to your people. There's a point in her life where she's seen the effects of apartheid. I mean, there was a number of points in her life, but it was a point in her life where she see that there was supposed to be a celebration of World War II, and she encouraged her father to attend, and so they tried to attend, but it was for whites only. So you and your family been in Africa all your life, and this is your land, the land of your ancestors, and now some foreigners come along and they decide how you're going to live. They're going to come up with rules and laws that's going to subjugate you and your people. And this begins her consciousness. This starts to develop her uh, internally, and she starts to understand that this is not correct. Obviously, she loves her people, she loves her family, and she wants the best for them. And she knows that the only way this is going to be a reality is by what we commit ourselves to doing, what needs to be done in terms of moving us forward. That we can't stop until we are in a position to determine our own fate, determine our own destiny. There was let me go back to this question that I raised to the sister Betty about how can her example of being a wife of a political prisoner keep families of political prisoners strong today. The sister mentioned Dequi. Dequi was is a very strong sister, and she was at the forefront of the Sekou Dinga's Defense Committee, and her remarkable work, her being in a position to speak at a number of events regarding the state of Sekou, that inspired other family members of political prisoners. Her being an example. So when I see Winnie Mandela, I look at sisters like Dequi and other female family members of a number of political prisoners, like the sister that I know from Russell Maroon Schultz campaign. How Sister Sharon, she's always strong. I'm always having conversations when we see each other, checking up on each other. Uh, like when I seen that at Mumia Abu Jamal's rally for his birthday, she was there, and we got to speak, and I felt strong and inspired that she was still was in work. Sister, you back on?
No, I can't seem to get my picture to open up. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, so I'm willing to go like this
Now,
because the question that you're asking, that third one, is very important. What is the responsibility that serious organizers for the freedom of political prisoners have to the legacy of Winnie Mandela? And this is the point that is most important. One of the things you see when you look at the life of Winnie Mandela, that it was never about her, even though she was a mother, even though she was a wife. It was always about the true definition of nationalism and the fight against imperialism and the fight against colonialism. That was the primary objective, and if on the way you could hold your family together, then it was a good thing. If on the way you could celebrate your child's birthday, um, make sure that you had a special party for your mate, when they celebrated some kind of milestone in their life. But when you look at Winnie Mandela, she always understood what colonialism was, and she always understood that if we did not defeat colonialism, we could not win. That the revolution would just slide right back down to the slavery that was held before, and it would be even more dangerous. I remember my mate and comrade Ralph Pointer. At one point, felt sad, and I said, "Why are you looking so sad?" He said, "Because the South African Revolution is in trouble. It's going to be Negroized the way the blacks in America have been Negroized. We had an uprising in the 60s, but the revolution is not complete." And to me, Winnie Mandela never looked back. When she stepped up to the plate to be the companion to Nelson Mandela, she understood that it was a companionship with the freedom for the history of her country and also the future of her country. And with that in mind, we can't afford petty um philosophical arguments to separate us. We all know what freedom looks like. If you don't control your economy, if you don't control the institutions within your economy, then you are not free. You are simply a neo colony. And that's why I will always lift her up, because she did not compromise, and she risked everything. She risked her family, and she risked her mate and her relationship with Nelson Mandela to guarantee the true history of her country. And that's our responsibility as organizers, to constantly hold that mirror up to ourselves to make sure we're not substituting our own personal desires and confusing them with the ultimate objective of the freedom of our people.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think this question, is very important to reflect internally, right? Because the work is ongoing. You're dealing with a number of obstacles. You're dealing with a number of things that's going on, and your relationships would change with different comrades. But as long as you understand that you are in this long term and you make that commitment to achieve that goal. And Winnie Mandela was the example of that. So if we have any respect for Winnie Mandela, we'll continue to do that work because we know the sacrifices that she made, and we know that she represents just that seriousness when it comes to our right to self-determination. I think about her. I think about Mumia. I think about how Mumia was inspired by Winnie Mandela. How all our political prisoners was inspired by each other. We need those morale boosts. We might be feeling low. We might be feeling discouraged. We might be feeling unmotivated. But when we look at somebody like Winnie Mandela and their legacy of being consistent with the struggle for our liberation, then that inspires us to continue to go, continue to be involved, attend programs, do writings, and communicate with our comrades about what ideas we have so that we can be on the same page, that we can get the best out of each other. I just want to spend the next few minutes just reflecting um, on Winnie Mandela because I know that I only had three questions for you, and I know that it's important that we utilize this time most efficiently when it comes to talking about our political prisoners. I'm always telling people that we have to write to our political prisoners because this conversation that we have with our political prisoners on writing it keeps them going. It keeps us sharp. It reminds us that we have more work to do. I think when I reflect on um, Winnie Mandela, I reflect on just how when she was criticized on certain things that she might not have done, she took accountability of how she could have did things differently. I thought that when she felt attacked,
Yes,
it didn't stop her from going. And I
yes,
think I
yes.
think that when we have to deal with our families criticizing us about our political prisoner work or even our political work, we have to continue to go because they're not conscious, they're not involved, so they're not necessarily going to be in a position to give us any sound advice. We have to understand that. So as you reflect on her, what's some reflections that come to your mind when you
Well, one
think
of the
about her?
things that concerns me is that, as you pointed out, in the struggle for liberation, we are all a product of the capitalist death that they call culture, especially in America. And so we have all been influenced by it in some way. That is one of the true trademarks of neocolonialism. So, one of the first things we have to have is that humility to accept criticism from within the movement from our comrades. But by that same token, everyone has the right to be to reclamation. And this is what our struggle is. Our struggle for freedom is one of reclamation, reclaiming our humanity. Frantz Fanon makes this clear. That is one of the main agendas of freedom, to reclaim yourself by fighting this struggle. And as comrades, it is our duty to help each other be able to achieve that goal and that objective. And this is what Winnie did for Nelson Mandela. There are many of us that felt that the deal that was made with the Caucasian white apartheid government was incorrect. Um, and we often feel within the United States that what Glenn Ford calls the black misleadership class is one of the most dangerous things to our movement. And if we believe, as Winnie believed, that we must focus on the next generation, help the next generation to understand the contradictions and fight against them. If we believe that struggle, in that struggle, our revolution will be complete. But it cannot be complete unless that element of self criticism and allowing a comrade, forgiving a comrade, and enabling that comrade to change is incorporated into our movement. And to me, that's what Winnie Mandela represented when she accepted criticism but never gave up the struggle for true um, revolution, true revolutionary change. She represents the best of us. And I salute her and thank you for saluting her memory.
Yes, absolutely. You know, when I'm thinking about when she passed away, and there was a younger comrade who obviously took mentorship from her and actually said that she should have been the president. I think about, you know, me being 52, me being able to talk to a younger comrade who's 30 years younger than me, but respects my perspective, respects the fact that, you know, I'm doing as much as I could, and actually I could do more around issues, particularly political prisoners. So the younger comrade brought me to a speaking event, and we would collaborated together. We spoke, but I know that we have a responsibility to build these relationships with another generation, and I think when we build in these relationships, we don't come from a position of having all the answers. We let the younger generation have creative input. We let the younger generation see us as being just like them, normal and vulnerable on certain things, and then unclear on certain things, and we actually need their input. And we need to see their perspective. You know, they are more in tune to the technology. In fact, they are more advanced with the technology. So their position aids us in carrying on the work. And we know that, you know, at some point we're going to be ancestors, and they're going to be taking on the work. So those relationships are very important. We have to continue to learn from one another. So at her funeral, when this comrade was speaking about her, and I thought that that let us know that every generation has that responsibility to pass the work on to another generation, because the work is ongoing, right? Because even when we're free, even when we're in a position of power, you have to maintain that freedom. You have to maintain that power. You got to make sure that the ideas that are circulating amongst your people are not ideas that are going to move you back, but only move you forward. And I think that to see that happen was clear on how she seen things moving forward for South Africa. She knew that younger people were coming, and the younger people had to be clear about the importance of land, and younger people had to be clear on what was at the heart of everything, and what they actually needed to be fighting for, and to make no compromise. So when you look at Winnie Mandela, and you look at her relationship with the younger generation, what comes to mind to you?
Well,
I
one
know
of
that I
the
didn't
things
give you
she
that
did,
question before.
what she did was, and I want to give an example of what you're talking about. We are currently involved in Curb Fest. And Curfest is our way of going to the people to help them understand that they're people whose shoulders they're standing on, i.e., our political prisoners. And the Curfest is usually in the streets of our community, where our community can hear and see us talk about our political prisoners. And one of the things I like about Curfest, especially the Curfest that you helped organize last year in Queens, was the interrelationship of the generation that is coming up and your generation and my generation. It's activities, community activities such as this, that help transform the minds of the people and help them understand their relationships to their oppressor. You cannot have too many of them. Another example of what you're talking about and how we can continue that struggle that Winnie Mandela tried to continue even after the uh, political prisoners were released from the colonial death camps. You've got to have activities that interdict the people into the institutions that the colonial powers are still holding on to. And one of the things that happened in South Africa, and one of the things that continued in this country, is that class contradiction. People who had the degrees moved into the colonial positions within our institutions without liberating these institutions and turning them over to to the movement and to their communities. So when we had the struggle for community control of public education, young people physically took their schools. They took their buildings back from the colonial powers. They fought against the army of occupation known as the police. It is struggles like this that help move the revolution forward. And until we learn how to deal with that, to fight dual contending colonial institutions in our community, our revolution will be stymied and it will not move forward. And I think your description of your relationship and working with that comrade is the beginning. We have to focus on the institutions, and one of them is the death camps that's holding our political prisoners. And of course, the other one is the public school system. And we could just keep right on going. The city council, the hospitals, the death camps known as prisons. And above all, we must fight against Cop City. And that's why I'm hoping that all of us will join the call of the spirit of Mandela's and be there July 4th in Atlanta to continue this struggle, to create Senate hearings, local Senate hearings around all the institutions that are oppressing us and continuing colonialism. And that's why Winnie got in trouble, because she continued to educate at I've lost the word. She continued to fight against colonialism in all of its forms. Agitate, that's the word I was looking for.
No problem. Our serious viewers understand where you taking us, and we appreciate your time. With that being said, we're going to end this episode. Always honored to have you on. I appreciate your time. For those who were viewing for the entire episode, please forgive us for the technical difficulties. But we have to endure. We have to keep going. This is about our political prisoners. We need to talk about them, have discussions about them. We need to advocate for their freedom, be a part of a formation. And if you don't like the formations that are formated, um, start your own formation, right? It's not about who you like or what you like being done, but it's about your involvement. It's about you having creative input, deciding that the issue of political prisoners matters, and it matters enough for you to do something about it. With that being said, what's the call?
Free them all.
What's the call?
Free them all.
Peace
And
and love,
see
my
you in
sister.
July in Atlanta.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome.